Hi, thanks for watching. This is about Gartnavel Royal and people associated with it. It's a mental health facility and it always has been. It says here, a committee of management for the hospital was formed in 1804 and construction began in the Cowcaddens area of Glasgow in 1810. It was originally opened as the Glasgow Lunatic Asylum in 1814, but after Royal Charter was obtained it became the Glasgow Royal Lunatic Asylum in 1824. So what they're saying here is they had a meeting that lasted 6 years to discuss putting up this structure, which would take only 4 years to build. You might see this is a picture, you might see the size of it. I'll show you where it is. Right, here it's here. Now they say they threw this up in 4 years. Right, so let's see the size of it. Yes, that's it. Right, there you go. Right, call it 300 yards long. Pretty big. Right. Let's then take a wee look. Right. I'll do it. So this is put together in 4 years, they say. There's the front door, and that'll be the west wing. And I'll make this the east wing. Right. So to show you the size of the place, I mean, that's part of it down there as well. Right. And it's always that. There used to be a church in there. So, right. So I'll now take you in and give you a closer look at this place that was thrown up in 4 years. Right, so they say they built this place in 4 years. So let's see what they've done. So what we've got here at the front, we've got 2 stories, then 3 stories, and there's a floor below the street. We'll get a better look at all that. But first I'll go round the back. And this here, this is the part of the hospital that I think is responsible for the torture. I'll look into that later. Right, so there's the back of the old hospital. Right. And we've got a church there. But that's an add-on. You can see that right in that corner. Right, so you can see that's been added on. Right. Okay. There's been a lot of add-ons. So let's go on the back of the main hospital. Right, so here's the hospital that's still in use at the moment. And that would constitute another level. Right. Do you work here, pal?
I work here.
Really?
Aye.
Can I ask a couple of questions? Can I ask a couple of questions?
If you want.
Right, see how to the front of this hospital you've got the 3 floors, then you've got one down in the moat.
Aye. That's
Right.
we call that tunnel.
They call it a tunnel.
Aye.
That's the one below the street level.
Aye.
Aye. Right, now, how does that happen, you think?
What do you mean?
Do you think the architect built the property like that?
Aye, well, see the tunnel. That was for you're really insane.
Right. Well, I'm sorry, there must be lots of people like that because I find that all over the city.
Aye, well, that's the tunnel. They used to, many centuries ago, they used to put the really insane murderers, rapists, whatever, down there.
See, I'm reading about this place,
Aye.
right? And they say that they had a meeting in 1810
Right.
and decided to build this place.
Aye.
And by 1814 it was completed
Aye.
and open to the public.
What's it, 2-4 years?
18, aye, that's what they say. Right, you believe that?
Yes. No, I don't believe
They
that.
couldn't do that today.
Christ. Ah,
They
you
couldn't do
wouldn't-
that today.
I don't think they'd be building the 1814.
That's what they say.
1810 to the 1814.
That's what they say. They say they had a meeting in 1810 and by 1814 it was completed and open to the public.
Yeah. Don't believe that, mate, honestly.
That's what they say. Right, I got that in Wiki Lies. Right, but all the other lies are. See, I find this everywhere.
Right.
Right, it's all over the city. You ever been to Blackwood, sir?
Aye.
Right, same here. Now, the houses in Blackwood Square,
Aye.
they've got the lower floor in the moat. They've also got another floor below that.
Right.
So,
My basement or whatever?
no, the houses were built with 5 stories,
Aye.
and then all the around the ground rose up and covered them. Cheers, pal.
There you go, mate. Right.
So he works here, and he assumes this place has been opened and running for, what was it he said, hundreds of years. Right, okay. See if I can find somebody else that works here. Might know a bit more than him. See, I'm going away down here at the road because it's a working hospital and I don't want anybody tugging me for being here. Right, there's a path up here I can go on. Right, there you go. That'll do it. Right, just what I'm looking for. Right. Get a bit closer now. Right. Now, the windows have all got grates under them. What does that mean? Another floor. Well, that guy did just say help yourself, so I will. Right. Right. This must be bad here. Nothing. Oh, this looks interesting. Right, that's been added on. Right. So what's here like the courtyard? Just like a courtyard, aye?
Eh?
Just like a courtyard.
Aye. It used to be called the mushroom.
Oh, that there.
That, yeah.
So see how you were saying earlier,
Aye.
what do they call that below the ground again?
The tunnel they call
The
it.
tunnel. So is the tunnel down there as well?
Aye. Runs right along.
So it's under the entire building?
Aye.
But only the front has been opened?
Eh?
They've only opened the front part yet?
Ah, no, they don't use that anymore.
No, but what I'm saying is, the other side of the building,
Aye.
they've cleared it and
Aye.
freed the bolting.
Aye.
But here they've no.
They just don't use it at all. These buildings are no used. Apart from the level.
Right. So it's only that bit that gets used then?
Eh?
These are all shut?
No, they're all offices. Up the stair
Right.
was wards. Same goes there.
So how deep does that go?
This is a drain, mate.
That's a drain. That's a windy, pal. I can see it from here. It's a brick top windy. The more I talk to this guy, the less I know. Right. So my guess is this bottom bit is like a skirt going round the entire base of the building to cover what I just showed you there, the floor below here. Can we go through there?
Ah, you can go through, just shut the door after you.
Right, cheers, pal. Excellent, right. Shut the door. I can need door on. Right, what's in here? Right. This is pretty cool, getting in with permission and everything. That's unusual. Right. That's a pretty cool big bench. Right. So, here we have the back of the building, and there's the floor below ground level, and there's your 3 floors above. And for more proof, look at this. And this obviously was part of the original building. So right, there's another door. So I think these gardens must have been prepared for the patients that are allowed to get out. Right. Well, look. Jam tight. Right, go back out the way we came in. Here, new door, mate. Right, what else we got? I'll wait to see the side of this building. That's really weird. That's a wee squirrel. Right. So that's another garden. And that'll have another floor below the ground level. And what's in here? What have we got here? Again, same thing. They've put like a skirt round the entire building to hide the floor, or to stop uncovering the floor below. There's only 2 stories here. Right. And over here, there's the typical grates above the window, which is still being used. Below, right there. Right. Same again. Right here. Right. Right. Right here. I mean, what else would that be? Other than a window. Right. Let's go out now. Keep going this way. Nah, no chance of that. Oh well. Right, that's the path that I've just walked up. Right. Now, this is the west side of the building. And it looks a wee bit unusual to say the least. Right, so here we've got 3 stories. Right, and here we've got 3 stories. And up here we've got 3 stories. But one of these stories disappears. Right, so there's a level line right in the middle of the screen, and it goes right across here, and then there. So they've done some work here. A lot of this is been faked. So the design of the building, there'll be windows below them, and there's no, and it's all patched up. Nah. Right. What's this up here? Right. This looks a bit sus. Right. So that's what I was saying. I think they've put this, looks like sandstone blocks. Find out what that means. But I think they've all been put up to cover the windows that were below. Kind of like that. Like that. That's doing about 6 feet. Easy. There's the window. Quite easily. Right. So that's what I mean. That's what they've done. Or in the back of the building. Or most of the back of the building. Right here, no, not so much. Right. Oh. Right. Done a lot of work on here. See that top bit? The bit that's castellated? Well, that's an add-on. That's been added on. Definitely. And there's your floor below ground level. So, what would have happened here because this is built on top of a hill, right? So all the land in this area is all flat. So what do we have? Some crazy architect decides to go up on top of a hill and dig a big hole, then build a big house. Nah. Right. So, look at this from here. Then, this is the high point. So, whatever happened here. And on the side of the building. It just flowed, like I keep saying. Right. You can tell the difference with the materials. And the aging and the weathering. It's like the house that Jack built. That stuff at the top, that's been added on. Pretty much the same as the front door here. It's all been added on. Right, so we'll dug into it here. I don't know if that's the original front door size or what. Yeah, there's a bit of jiggity pokery going on. Right. Again. There's this guy, what was it he called it? I don't remember. But like, this is an architectural design, right? Right. Well, that's the main hospital of the Royal. So let's look at the older bit. Let's get a better look at that. Right, so this is the bit that I think they're going to demolish. And here is the main hospital. But at some time in the past, this bit here was a church. There was a church that sat here. So, what happened to that? Take a look in here now. This is the back courtyard. So, this will be the original stuff here. And the stuff here will be original. But this church has been added on. The whole section has been added on to the side of the building at some time. See, there was a lot of different additions to this place, which don't help. Let me take a look in here.
Nothing of interest here. Right. It's another derelict building with a hell of a history. Yep. It was definitely joined on at some stage. Right. So was this built at the same time as the other bit? Within that crazy 4-year period? Nah. This is an addition. Because I think it was four or five different times that they added stuff and changed things. Right. What else we got here? Right. So that's the bit we just went round. Right, so again, you've got the building at pretty much the top of the hill, like that, and then it comes away down here, and this is the same building. Actually 3 stories, which has got 4. Alright.
Get some good shots.
Aye, I'm looking here. You worked here?
Uh-huh.
How long for?
Oh, not too long, about 2 years I've worked
Have
here,
you?
but I know a wee bit about the place.
Do you?
Aye. You look for ghosts?
No, no, I'm actually, do you know what bit they used to use for the experiments?
The experiments? No, that's one thing I don't know.
Right,
No.
because, have you heard the MKUltra?
No.
The CIA taught? No, yeah, right.
Right, I'll see you later.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye. That guy I was talking to, I was just talking to a nurse there and asked her if she knew about the history of this place. And that wee guy just drove by and he said, "That's a boiler room, mate." Boiler room? Are you serious? That's what he said. And this bit here, that could be the boiler room. So, this is pretty crazy, I know. A really big building. Right. So that must have led somewhere at some time. Need to go up here. Right, we're up. Let me look at the back of the building now. Right. Right. There's a wee addition there, say. I wonder what that was for. That's modern. The walls should talk, eh? Tearing this place down, I think.
And before I proceed, I'd like to warn you that the narration may get graphic and sometimes disturbing. Now consider yourself warned. Right. Hollywood Inquiry to probe historic CIA-backed human brainwashing experiments. The Hollywood Inquiry into historic child abuse will be asked to investigate Scottish links to the infamous CIA-backed brainwashing programme. The Sunday Express can now reveal. This is from April 5th, 2015. So I'll need to do a follow-up and see how far they got. Now, it's about pretty much This Scots-born psychiatrist, Donald Ewan Cameron, became notorious for his role in the top-secret MKUltra program, running experiments in orphanages and psychiatric hospitals in Canada in the 1950s. He used LSD, electroconvulsive therapy, insulin-induced comas, and repetition to try and erase memories, a technique the CIA hoped to develop into a weapon in the Cold War. That'll be the fake Cold War. Now, I'll show you what Wiki say about this guy, just to give you a flavour of what it was like. Normally, when you go to Wiki, you tend to look for the highlights of people's life, their achievements and things. Well, with this guy, nah, you're looking at the depths of depravity this man will stoop to make his theory work. Right, here he's here. Born 1901, and he died in Lake Placid, New York. Now, I find it ironic that he died in a place called Lake Placid and he was anything but. Let's see his career. He was a Scottish-born psychiatrist who served as President of the American Psychiatric Association, the Canadian Psychiatric Association, the American Psychopathological Association, the Society of Biological Psychiatry, and World Psychiatric Association. High-profile guy. In spite of his high professional reputation, he had been criticised for, among other things, his experimentation on adults and children, as well as his involvement in child sexual abuse, administering electroconvulsive therapy and experimental drugs, including poison such as curare, to patients and prisoners without their informed consent, and his role in the history of development of psychological and medical torture techniques. Some of his work took place in the context of the Project MKUltra program for the developing of mind control and torture techniques, psychoactive poisons and behaviour modification systems. Decades after his own death, the psychic driving, which we'll look at, technique he developed continued to see extensive use in the torture of prisoners around the world. What a legacy. Right, so let's see what we've got. Right. Cameron was one of the psychiatrists that was invited to do an evaluation of Rudolf Hess during the Nuremberg trials, and their diagnosis was amnesia and hysteria. And Hess later confessed that he had faked the amnesia. But this guy, I don't think he liked Germans. It said before his arrival in Nuremberg, Cameron had written The Social Reorganisation of Germany, in which he argued that German culture and its individual citizens would have to be transformed and reorganised. Right, so what does he say about them? Right. Like Freud, Cameron maintained that the family was the nucleus of social behaviour, and anxieties later in life were spawned during childhood. Cameron wanted to build an inventive psychiatric institution to determine rapid ways for societal control while demanding a psychological economy that did not centre itself around guilt and guilt complexes. His focus on children, including the rights to protection against outmoded doctrinaire tactics and the necessity for the implantation of taboos and inhibitions from their parents. Cameron wrote that mental illness was transmitted generationally. Thus, the reoccurrence of mental illness could be stopped by remodelling and expanding existing concepts of marriage suitability, as well as the quarantine of mentally ill individuals from the general population. The only cure for mental illness, he theorised, was to eliminate its carriers from society altogether. Cameron believed that mental illness was literally contagious, that if one became into contact with someone suffering from mental illness, one could produce the symptoms of a mental disease. For example, something like rock music could be created by mentally ill people and would produce mentally ill people through infection, which in turn would be transmitted to the genes. Thus, this group would have to be studied and controlled as a contagious social disease. Police, hospitals, government, schools would need to use the correct psychiatric authority to stop mental contagions from spreading. Cameron also hoped to generate families capable of using authority and techniques to take measures against mental illness. This will later be apparent in Cameron's MKUltra and MKDelta experiments. This guy is a nutter. Right, what he says about the Germans. In Cameron's book, Life is for Living, he published in 1948, he expressed a concern for the German race in general, like the whole population. Just as Sigrid Schultz stated in Germany will try it again, Cameron fostered the fear for Germans and their genetic determinations. Those Germans affected by the events that led to World War II were of the utmost concern. Cameron's concerns extended to its policies determining who should have children and or advance to a position of authority. According to Cameron's psychiatric analysis of the German people, they were not suitable to have children or hold positions of authority because of a genetic tendency to organise society in a way that fostered fearsome aggression and lead to war rather than peace. He would repeatedly use the German as the archetypal character structure on which to ground the most psychologically deviant humans. Like I say, he didn't like the Germans. MKUltra Sub-Project 68. During the 1950s and 60s, Cameron became involved in what was later to become known as the MKUltra Mind Control Program, which was covertly sponsored by the CIA, and which eventually led to the publication of the Cuba Counterintelligence Interrogation Manual. Cameron's work was funded under MKUltra's Sub-Project 68. He is unrelated to another CIA psychiatrist, Alan S. Cameron, who helped pioneer psychological profiling of world leaders during the 70s, and is not associated with the Behavioural Modification Research Program. Cameron had been hoping to correct schizophrenia by erasing existing memories and reprogramming the psyche. He commuted from Albany to Montreal every week to work at McGill's Allen Memorial Institute and was paid $69,000 from 1957 to 1964 to carry out MKUltra experiments there, known as the Montreal experiments. In addition to LSD, he experimented with various paralytic drugs and electroconvulsive therapy at 30 to 40 times the normal power. His psychic driving experiments consisted of putting a subject into a drug-induced coma for weeks at a time, up to 3 months in one case, while playing tape loops of noise or simple statements. These experiments were typically carried out on patients who had entered the institute for minor problems, such as anxiety disorders and postnatal depression. Many suffered permanent debilitation after these treatments. Such consequences included incontinence, amnesia, forgetting how to talk, forgetting their parents, and thinking their interrogators were their parents. There's nothing unusual in any of that, eh? Wow. His work was inspired and paralleled by the psychiatrist William Sargent. You know, listening to Mark Sargent, who was also involved with intelligence services and experimented extensively on his patients without their consent, causing similar long-term damage. Several of the children who Cameron experimented on were sexually abused, in at least one case by several men. One of the children was filmed numerous times performing sexual acts with high-ranking federal government officials in a scheme set up by Cameron and other MKUltra researchers to blackmail the officials to ensure further funding for their experiments. Wow, so that's how they get funding. I never knew that. Right. Oh, I think this guy was a pioneer of 5G. Right. Sid Taylor stated that Cameron used curare to immobilise his patients during his research. After one test he noted, although the patient was prepared by both prolonged sensory isolation for 35 days and by repeated depatterning, and although she received 101 days of positive driving, no favourable results were obtained. Patients were tested in the radiotelemetry laboratory, which was built under Cameron's direction. Here, patients were exposed to a range of RF and electromagnetic signals and monitoring for changes in behaviour. It was reported that none of the patients sent to the radiotelemetry lab showed any signs of improvement. That would have pissed them off. Right, back to the inquiry. Right, now, when details of the MKUltra project emerged in the 1970s, it caused a huge public outcry and led to both the US and Canadian governments paying out compensation to hundreds of victims. Now campaigners in Scotland are to come forward with sensational claims that similar experiments were also being carried out on this side of the Atlantic. Last night, one abuse survivor said, "The similarities are unbelievable. The drugs program, the experimentation. We were also doing these things in the 1950s here in Scotland, allowing this deplorable behaviour by the medical elite." One medic likely to be named by the campaigners is Dr. Angus McNiven, who trained alongside Cameron at Gartnavel Royal Hospital and went on to become one of the most eminent figures in Scottish medicine. However, this newspaper has seen evidence that at least one patient died while being experimented on under his care. Cameron, who was born Bridge of Allen, blah blah blah. Right. So the NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde archives contain a file of correspondence between Cameron and McNiven, who was physician superintendent at Gartnavel from 1932 to 1966. Wow. The correspondence covers the years 1924 to 1959, but has been closed to the public for 75 years, along with the rest of McNiven's staff papers. In July 1959, Cameron told a medical conference in Glasgow about his research into how exposure to repetition of carefully worded statements could change the personality. This was the brainwashing or psychic driving procedure at the heart of MKUltra, which has since been described as a form of medical torture. The topic is featured in books such as Manchurian Candidate and Anesthetic Oaths and blah blah blah. Right. The survivor, who asked not to be named for legal reasons, said McNiven, who died in 1982, "The man was out of control and out of his depth, and what he was doing in that hospital was absolutely appalling. It is known that experiments involving LSD were carried out at Gartnavel. Drug-induced comas, ECT, and restraint and seclusion were also commonplace in many asylums. However, the suggestion that children were being used as guinea pigs in a program linked to the British or American Secret Services is certain to prove hugely controversial if discussed at the inquiry. The claims were revealed by this newspaper in December and now form part of the official submission to the Scottish Government from the In-Care Abuse Survivors Group. It states the inquiry should also review medical experimentation that was carried out on vulnerable children and adults without consent. Alan Draper, the Inquest's parliamentary liaison officer, said, "I've heard the name Dr. McNiven mentioned on a number of occasions. I know that the legal people involved do have the relevant files, although the files do have a tendency to disappear." Ain't that the truth? One of the problems we want the inquiry to consider is the discussion of records. For example, many medical files from Lennox Castle Hospital in Lennoxtown, Stirlingshire, where some of the experiments are said to have taken place, were destroyed in a fire. Now, where have I heard that before? However, the British Journal of Psychiatry archives do contain evidence of patients being selected for experiments at Gartnavel. In 1936, McNiven published a report of an experiment where 40 asylum patients, some of them suffering from melancholia or depression, were kept in a drug-induced state of sleep for 10 to 14 days. One woman developed pneumonia and died, although in his report McNiven denies it was linked to the injection of somnifene, a powerful barbiturate. He also reported that a man suffered a cardiac collapse. One man's temperature hit 104 degrees centigrade, prompting McNiven to note, "We felt unwise to continue treatment in this case." Good call. McNiven also gave permission for 2 drug trials involving schizophrenics which set out to deliberately provoke neurological disturbances. Both studies in 63 and 64 resulted in disturbing side effects. No age of patients were given, but another Gartnavel study sanctioned by McNiven in 1966 involved 2 17-year-old schoolboys. Inquest President Frank Doherty from East Kilbride, who first exposed the issue of abuse in Scottish children's homes more than 15 years ago, said, "These experiments were kept hidden from the public eye and they were happening in places all over Scotland. The number of victims could run into thousands. The Scottish Consortium for Learning Disability has estimated that up to 12,000 children with learning disabilities spent time in residential care up to 1981. Although it is not suggested that all were subjected to medical experimentation, the campaigners insist that a significant number would have experienced unwanted drug testing. The Scottish Government said yesterday the inquiry chair and remit would be announced by the end of April. A spokesman for the Health Board added it would be inappropriate for us to comment on allegations that happened many years ago. Right. So, the next link here. Scots orphans used in military experiments. Holyrood's Child Abuse Inquiry will hear claims that British military scientists conducted drug tests on orphans in Scottish mental hospitals. The allegations centre in at least 4 institutions where thousands of children are said to have been experimented upon in conditions described as something out of Auschwitz. It is alleged that Porton-Down, the top secret military facility in Wiltshire, was involved in trialling drugs to use in the Cold War on youngsters who were regarded as feeble-minded. One survivor told this newspaper he had obtained written and video evidence that he will pass to the public inquiry in historical abuse of children in care when it begins next year. The man, now in his 50s, has been advised by lawyers to conceal his identity for his own safety until his full position can be lodged at the inquiry announced by the Scottish Education Secretary, Angela Constance. However, he was willing to divulge some of the intended testimony about the treatment he and others suffered. He said 6 and 7-year-olds were tied to racks and given electric shocks. I was incarcerated with orderlies armed with rubber crosses. We were imprisoned, experimented on, lobotomised, you name it, they did it. I was there, I saw it with my own eyes. I was classed as an outfit, a mental oddity, made a ward of court. My mother was killed and I became an orphan, so they took it upon themselves to have me experimented upon. Lennox Castle Hospital near Lennoxtown, East Dunbartonshire, is one of 4 Scottish institutions in Leicester have been involved. The witness believes there may have been as many as 3,500 children who were involved in the Porton Down testing programme over the years. They were using orphans to experiment with drugs for the Cold War. The drug programme ran from 1948 to 1982. I believe this happened throughout the UK, but I'm referring to Scotland. I have this evidence on paper and on film, and I will hand it to the public inquiry. It was like something out of Auschwitz, and people will be full of revulsion when they learn the state allowed this to happen. Lennox Castle was closed in 2002 and now the site of Celtic FC's training ground. It was home to children and adults with learning difficulties or conditions such as Down syndrome, as well as truants, unmarried mothers and wayward teenagers. Some patients were sent there as children, often for the most trivial reasons, and ended up spending decades locked up. Conditions improved after a series of damning reports and investigations, including a 1986 World in Action documentary, which led to questions in the House of Commons. Some stories have appeared and reappeared over the last 50 years, including a similar one to drug testing and euthanasia involving elderly people that was eventually shown to be false. 6 years ago, hundreds of veterans who volunteered to take part in tests in Porton Down were offered £3 million in compensation. They were exposed to nerve agents such as sarin gas and hallucinogens such as LSD. The most famous case in 1953, Ronald Madison took part in a trial in what he believed was a cold remedy, but died within an hour of having sarin dabbed on his arm. Other Porton Down experiments included spraying bacteria over the south coast of England and dropping cancer-causing particles from planes. That'll be the chemtrails then, eh? And Gartnavel Island in Wester Ross has to be sealed off for almost 50 years after it was contaminated with anthrax during the Second World War. Porton Down is the home of the Defence Science and Technology Laboratory and Agency of the Ministry of Defence, and a spokeswoman said, "We are not aware of any tests involving children at Porton Down and have seen absolutely no evidence to back up these claims." And the cancer-causing particles from a plane, well, they don't need to be away up in the sky. It could be a crop duster just above you. Right, so I'm going to finish off by looking at a couple of pictures. Gartnavel was praised because it had segregation. Everybody had their own room. And if you had money, this would be your day room. And this would have been your dining room. And the unfortunates would be here. And this will be everything room. And they've all got their own room here, as you can see, or cell. And these two here, unbelievably, this is Victorian tourism. They pay a couple of pennies to go in and have a laugh at people less fortunate than themselves. Wow. Right, and it was a teaching hospital, so this is why you see all the nurses all watching what's going on. And this will be the orphans. Christ knows what their fate would have been. Then I found this, and I thought, what does that remind you? Seriously? This? Is that where he got the inspiration for that? You saw one of these? Well, thanks for watching. Please comment.